that guy's Dallas Goedert, because not only is Goddard prepped to have a big season, most of these off-season rankings lists have him somewhere between the 5th and the 7th best tight end in the National Football League. That's a pretty high ranking. The Eagles only have a handful of guys who are ranked higher than that in most of these lists, and most of them, by the way, on the offensive line, where luckily they have depth, and if they lost an offensive line guy, they wouldn't get killed because they've got good guys who are ready to come off the bench. The backup tight end position for the Eagles is a little bit thin, to say the least. And a good football Friday, Birds fans. You got your Mac and Mac guys, Jody McDonald and John McMullen. We sounding okay there, Johnny Mac? You hearing me?
Oh, yeah, I'm hearing you. A little bit of a hiccup. I hear what you're saying. Hopefully it won't go south on us, Jody, but good to see you. How you feeling? Number one, the tremendous work ethic of Jody McDonald. Test COVID positive. He's out one day, 24 hours, and there, bang, you're back. It's pretty impressive.
It was a tough 48 hours because as soon as I got off the air with you on Wednesday, I knew I was hurting. And the wife said, "Oh, you're taking a test." And we went over this last week. You believe you've taken 100 plus COVID tests, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. How many times they come back positive?
Zero. Crossing the finger.
So you're 0 for 100 and change. I'm 1 for 1.
Yeah, I'm in a hell of a slump, Jody.
Yeah,
which is a good slump.
You're going to have to test positive a hell of a lot more to try and catch up to your partner, who's batting 1,000 in COVID.
That's impressive.
tests.
That's Hall of Fame numbers. There's no way I'm getting the Mendoza line. Never mind 300. So.
Understood. Yeah, if you got close to the Mendoza line, we'd be sending flowers to your funeral.
Exactly.
So glad to hear we're at the opposite ends of the spectrum. But yeah, I'm feeling better. Doctors prescribed a medicine for me, and it's working. It's cutting back on the aspects of COVID, but it's doing a number of my digestive tract, which is no fun whatsoever. So I'm still fighting my way through it, but knew by late afternoon yesterday I'd be good to go today because I'd get another good night's sleep there. Wednesday night, I went to bed at 8 o'clock. The last time I went to bed at 8 o'clock, I think I was in the 7th grade. I have not gone to bed at 8 o'clock since I don't know how long, but the rest has helped, and I do feel better. And it's a good thing because we should be getting pumped for the start of a football season. We're down to just 11 days before camp opens up. A day or two later, Johnny will get his first grass time with the 2022 Eagles. Which, yes, that's what this city looks forward to. I know I've told this the show many a time on my radio shows. I'm not sure if I've told it on Birds 365, but I moved to town in 1990, and I came in from New York, which is, and forever will be a baseball town. It's the number one sport in that town. Always had been Yankees, first the Dodgers and the Giants, then the Mets. It has been a baseball town first and foremost. Not that there aren't huge fan bases for both the Giants and the Jets, but they just don't compare to the size and the passion of the baseball fans in town. And I'd never worked in a town that wasn't a baseball first town. And I had to come here to Philadelphia to learn that, other towns can put football before baseball. Didn't know it, wasn't sure about it. First show I ever did on WIP, I walked into my boss's office, and I laid out the show for him before Lenny Dykstra was going to be batting leadoff in the All-Star game that night, And I finished running down the things I want to talk about during the day. It's July. It's a similar date to this one. Tonight, this weekend is going to be the All-Star weekend. So it's right around the same time, 32 years ago. And my boss said, "Well, what do you think about the Eagles?" And I said, "Boss, it's July. There's nothing going on. The Eagles aren't in camp. We got 2 weeks before camp open up. Free agency is done. I doubt highly I'm going to get that many Eagle calls." He said, "Well, if I were you, I'd have an Eagle opinion or two ready." I said, "All right, well, I'll see if I can come up with something." Hopped on the air, talked about Lenny and the All-Star game and the Phillies second half of the season, telephone lines open. 4 of my first 5 calls were, is it smart to sign Jim McMahon? Will he be a deterrent to Randall Cunningham? Should we have a quarterback looking over the current starting quarterback's shoulder? How long is it going to take for Jim McMahon to take the starting quarterback from Randall Cunningham? These are 4 of my first 5 calls. I got 1 baseball call days before the All-Star game, and 4 out of the 5 callers wanted to talk about the Eagles and their backup quarterback. So it didn't take long for me to learn that Philadelphia is a football-first town, and with the fact that we're only 11 days away from camp opening up, yeah, this town should be ready to rock.
Yeah, they should be, man. We had your other partner, Glenn Macnow, on earlier in the week, and I think Glenn explained it well. It's like you get really, really pumped up for the opening of training camp, and then you start to say, this is kind of boring. And you look forward to that first preseason game, and you say, this is kind of, let's get to September. I think it's every year, but it is exciting, the first of training camp. And it's ironic because you've been doing this for so long, Jody, and you've been doing it so long in Philadelphia, as you mentioned. This was a baseball town at some point. I mean, you probably have to go back to the 76, 80-ish era of Schmidt and all those guys. But this, like the rest of the country, was baseball first, the national pastime. And I think I've asked you that question before. So you got here in 1990, and could you have sensed the shift? Shift already happened.
Yeah.
So it happened sometime between, say, 1980 and 1990. I can't put my finger on when it exactly happened.
Oh, I'll give you 2 words. Dick Vermeil.
Dick Vermeil. Yeah, going into the 1960, Dick Vermeil just had his, and people could see this on JAKIB Sports, wrote about it at Sports Illustrated as well. He had his virtual, everything's virtual still in the Hall of Fame, the media availability this week. And he talked about his time in Philadelphia. And it was basically 1960 to 1976 when Dick Vermeil got here. Awful team, awful organization, awful ownership, awful players. And it took Dick a couple years, 1978. So almost 2 decades. Then they finally get 1980, the championship game and the Super Bowl. So 2 decades for that. But yeah, he definitely is the start of it. And look, bottom line, they have a Hall of Fame coach, right? And the Eagles are just part of Dick Vermeil's lore. If you go, say, from 1976 to the present, you're not the best coach in Eagles history. He's probably the second best. Although you could, I guess, if you want to put all the eggs in the Super Bowl basket, you got to get Doug some respect. But look, Andy Reid's one of the greatest coaches of all time. Doesn't matter. Doug won a Super Bowl. Doesn't matter. Neither of them are more popular than Dick Vermeil. It's amazing. That one I can't figure out completely, but it's true. And it's kind of amazing. But you're right. I mean, he turned this organization around. And by the way, Jeffrey Lurie deserves a ton of credit because he's one of the best owners in the NFL. I'll criticize him when he deserves to be criticized. Like he sticks his nose into too many things. But it is way better to have an owner who cares and who wants to win than the opposite, who's just, in the industry because it's easy to make money and you can flip the team. I don't know if you saw the story, Jody, but $11 billion of national revenue for the NFL last year, obviously an all-time record. That means from day one, you pretty much know you're getting $335 million if you're an NFL owner just to run the team from revenue sharing. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good start. I think Front Page Sports was the one who did it. I'll try to figure it out. But, when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys, he spent less than $335 million. So many of the owners spent less than that. Just the operating income that you get to start the season. And that's not all of it, that's just the national stuff.
Right.
Is more than most owners, spent to buy these teams. So to have an owner like Jeffrey Lurie is a heck of a lot better than the alternative. And for the older fan, the younger generation has only had Jeffrey Lurie. He's been here for a long time, over a quarter century. But those who lived through, the Brahmans and the Tosa, they know better. They know better.
And Dick Vermeil was, as you said, we can argue his placement on a list of all-time great Eagle coaches and go back to Greasy Neal and figure out where most popular, Dick Vermeil. There's not even a debate. There's no conversation. Not necessarily the best. Achievements are achievements. Track records are track records. Resumes are resumes. Just most popular, beloved. Oh, yeah, Dick Vermeil. And I think that was, if there was a debate as to whether it was a baseball town or football town first, yeah, Dick Vermeil swung the pendulum enough to make it a football first town. All right, Johnny Mac, we got two good guests coming up today. Our buddy Martin Frank from Delaware News Journal and our very own Barrett Brooks will join us in hour number 2. Here's where I want to start with Eagles today, because you wrote about it, and it's funny because I was going to bring it up before I saw your latest missive. Where is the Eagles' biggest drop-off? We go into the season with the belief, unless you got guys who are on the PUP list before the season ever starts. No, by the way, Eagles have 2 of those. We believe that everybody's going to be healthy. We foolishly believe they're all going to be healthy for all 17 games. That never happens.
No.
But that's the way you look at it during the offseason when you're evaluating what kind of team you have. And you know who the 22 starters are going to be. And even with that, there's some reaches because certain positions lend themselves to situational substitutions and guys not going to play 100% of snaps on his side of the ball. But you know basically who your 22 lead guys are. And then there are the next 22 who back up each of those 11 positions on offense and defense. And if there is an injury at one of those positions, you have to put in your backup guy. How big is the drop-off? From your starter, from your best guy, from the guy you're banking on taking damn close to 100% of the snaps, to whoever you're going to have to fill in afterwards. And I don't think there is any question that the guy the Eagles can least afford to lose to an injury, 1 week, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, God forbid an entire season, that guy's Dallas Goedert. Because not only is Goddard prepped to have a big season, most of these off-season rankings lists have him somewhere between the 5th and the 7th best tight end in the National Football League. That's a pretty high ranking. The Eagles only have a handful of guys who are ranked higher than that in most of these lists. And most of them, by the way, on the offensive line, where luckily they have depth. And if they lost an offensive line guy, they wouldn't get killed because they've got good guys who are ready to come off the bench. The backup tight end position for the Eagles is a little bit thin, to say the least. And I saw your article where you speculated on some guys above and beyond those that are already on the roster. And let me, unfortunately, go ahead and say the guys on the roster aren't good enough. If they were to get involved with looking for another tight end, you threw out a couple interesting names.
Yeah, well, what that's Alex Schmidt did that, and he's one of our interns here at JAKIB Sports, so I want to give him credit. He's the one who threw out some names, potential. When I did my tight end preview, I mentioned, there's a significant drop off between Dallas Goedert and whoever, Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra, whoever you want to assume is going to be the tight end too. So you start, and by the way, we talked about that on the show. You start to talk about, if this is a position you might have to look outside the building, whether that means trade, whether that means cut down to 53 and who's on the waiver wire. There's a chance you can improve by going outside the building. And Alex brought up some big names. Eric Ebron, probably the most notable, who, had 13 touchdowns. I think everybody remembers him, former first-round pick, injury prone. It's kind of, where are you if you're the Eagles? And it seems to me, like, do you think you're a significant contender? If you're the Eagles and you're looking in the mirror and you think you're a significant contender, you probably want a Band-Aid in case something happens to Dallas Goedert. That you could at least have this you're going to have a drop off. That's understandable. As you mentioned, some of those positions on the offensive line. Well, if they lose Jordan Mailata or Jason Kelsey or Lane Johnson, they're going to have a drop off, but at least you're going to have a competent player to insert because they have such impressive depth. I can't necessarily say that at tight end. You hope it, but hope is not a strategy. A wise man once told me that. Howie, I'm looking at you. So, if hope is not a strategy, I think it's pretty clear the Eagles want to look at their young guys. They want to hope that Jack Stoll improves. They want to hope that Grant Calcaterra is what he was at Oklahoma, and he's really a second or third round talent or something of that nature. And maybe that takes off, and they'll revisit it if they get to camp and say, okay, these guys aren't ready. This isn't good. Then they might start looking outside the building. But I always say the big name, the big name trap, as Joe Banner likes to call it, you got to be wary of that as well. Everybody knows Eric Ebron. Everybody is coming off injuries. That 13 touchdown season was, 2018, a long time ago. Not that player now. So you got to be careful. You got to weigh it, but they need help. And one other name I'm going to throw out there as well is Hassan Reddick on the defensive side. When you talk about depth, if they lose Hassan Reddick, they're not even going to play that position. They're just going to change how they play. They're going to play more traditional defensive ends. They're going to play more Brandon Graham, maybe even Teron Jackson as a young player. Their backups behind Hassan Reddick are Patrick Johnson and Kyron Johnson. They're not even going to play that position if Hassan Reddick goes down. So those, I would add Dallas Goedert certainly, and I would also add on the defensive side Hassan Reddick, where there just isn't much depth behind those two players.
Right. I think you answered your own question there. You're not going to get a replacement for Hassan Reddick because they're just going to eliminate it.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're
going to go back to their former defense more than anything else. So then I don't see that as a major drop-off. It's just a major change. Dallas Goedert's a drop-off. If Dallas Goedert goes down, I saw Calcaterra play a handful of games at Oklahoma. I saw none of his games last year. The scouting reports were that he was a very good pass-catching tight end before he suffered X amount of concussions and decided to drop off of football, move away from football, and then decided to come back and play. I'll judge for myself. You'll judge for me when you're at practice on how good this kid can be, but he's a question mark. You do not replace an all-pro level player with a question mark and not think there's going to be a drop-off. So if I'm Howie Roseman, I'm sorry, I'm not worried about fear of the big name, fear of, are we in it? Are we a true contender? Are we a rebuilding team? What are we? No, you need an upgrade at the position. And if a guy's still unsigned at this stage of the year, nobody's commanding a multi-year deal. You're going to be able to get a decent team-friendly deal done with a guy. I would look for the Eagles to add another upgrade at the tight end position before we get too far into camp. All right, we haven't gotten too far into the show, 20 minutes to be exact, but that's the time we take our first break and bring in our first guest. Joining us next here on Birds 365 is Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal. He's next here on Birds 365.